Hey, Water's Edge family. As promised in my sermon last Sunday, I wanted to take a couple of minutes and unpack three of the fasting topics that I addressed in my sermon. Today, I want to take some time to address what we're calling the disciples' fast. Last night in prayer meeting, we talked a little bit about this and even brought some questions to my own mind as I was responding to some of the questions in prayer meeting. The disciples fast comes about from Matthew chapter 17 and Mark chapter 9, same story, but Jesus says this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. Prayer and fasting. So I want to unpack what Jesus meant when he said this kind does not come out except by prayer and fasting. Well, let me give you the context. A father brings his son, possessed by this tormenting spirit, to Jesus' disciples, but they cannot cast it out. So when Jesus arrives, he rebukes the unclean spirit, he heals the boy, and later the disciples ask, why couldn't we do that? I mean, we tried and nothing happened. And Jesus replied something very interesting. He said, it was because of their unbelief, or because you have so little faith. And then he adds this kind, particularly a strong resistance, demonic force, comes out only by prayer and fasting. There's two truths that bring out spiritual power and dependence in this. Number one, spiritual power flows from intimacy with God. I know I mentioned this on Sunday, but I was going so fast. Spiritual power flows from a oneness and intimacy with God, not a technique, not being able to pray with certain words or with certain power. It's an intimacy with God that brings about spiritual power. The disciples had authority in Jesus' name. Matthew 10 tells us that. But they were relying on past success or their own ability, not on the oneness that they had with the Father. Prayer and fasting cultivates this ongoing intimacy and spiritual sensitivity. Jesus is saying, you cannot confront darkness in your own strength. You must draw from the presence and the power of God. And fasting sharpens dependence. Prayer deepens our communion. And so together, prayer and fasting, they align the disciples' heart with God's authority. So prayer and fasting align the disciples' heart with God's authority. It also brings the question of this kind. This kind can only come about through prayer and fasting. Some battles in life require deep surrender. When Jesus says this kind, he acknowledges that spiritual opposition comes in varying degrees of intensity. Some situations, whether they're demonic oppression, persistent sin, addictions, deep spiritual bondage, these things require more than just surface level faith. They call for this heart posture of humility, fasting, and a desperate prayer of a life steeped upon God's relying upon God. So I want to caution you to think that Jesus is giving a secret formula to get his power to flow. This isn't a secret formula. If you do X fasting, and if you do it for 4 days instead of 2 days, you will get Y results. So it's not a formula. It's not X, Y. Jesus is teaching here that true authority flows from our abiding dependency. See, our authority comes not because we're powerful and good. Our authority comes from our oneness with Christ. So in essence, you can't cast out darkness unless you've been filled with light. And so fasting is this discipline that fills us with light. And so when we begin to pray to break the powers of darkness, or to break addictions in our life, or to pray for someone to have this broken addictions broken or freed from sin, what we're in essence doing, you're casting out darkness, because your life has been so filled with light through the prayer and fasting. Prayer and fasting do not earn God's power. They make space for God's power. Let me say that again. Prayer and fasting do not earn God's power. They make space for it. They strip away self-sufficiency so that faith, real living, trust can rise up. Jesus said, when you encounter this kind, something that doesn't move with normal effort. Think about that. When you run into this kind of situation, Jesus is saying this is something that it just doesn't move with normal effort. It's an invitation for us to say, this is going to require more than prayer. It's going to require more than going to the back of the sanctuary and having someone pray with you. When you encounter in your own life, when you encounter this kind of situation, look at it as an invitation. Okay? When you are up against things in life that are so overwhelming and you can't seem to find victory over, see those things never see them as a punishment or you must not be living right. It's not about that. When you come against this kind of situation, see it as an invitation to humble yourself before God, to seek His presence more deeply through prayer and fasting, and to trust in His power, not your own. Friends, I've learned this the hard way. Some mountains only move when you stop trying harder and start surrendering deeper. And if I could go back 20 years and tell my 40-year-old self anything, I think it might be that. I'd probably say a few other things too. But if I could go back 20 years and tell my 40-year-old Eric one thing, it would be, Eric, trust less in your own power and know that some mountains, some impossible situations,